most people consider Ledger to be a vault because the use case of the technology for now has been mainly focused around storing value. But we haven't really gotten to the stage where people are using crypto on a daily basis, where your gym membership is an NFT and you go and you buy sneakers in a shop and you need to sign a certain transactions using your wallet. I think all of these things will end up coming to life. And at this point, it won't be weird to walk around with a ledger device.
GM everyone, and welcome to Fuel for Thought, where we explore the multifaceted world of Web3 through the lenses of different industry leaders and thought leaders. My name is Chris Loisance, and today we have Mo El Sayed with me. This is my guest for today. I'm very happy to have you, Mo. We met at NFC Lisbon this year. It was a great event and also a great guy to meet. You're head of community and education at Ledger, and so we're going to talk about Ledger and what it means to build a community, educate people when they want to enter the Web3 space, about security and different topics, as well as art, because I know you're a big digital art collector. So how are you doing, Mo?
Hey Chris, thanks for having me. I'm great. What about you?
Yeah, I'm doing fine, thanks. It's the end of the week here. It's Friday. The episode will come out probably a week from now. So, if we talk about news, bear in mind that the episode will come out a few days after the recording. But, not too late because we really want to share what you have to say with us, with the community. So what I
Cool.
suggest we do in order to start is for us to give us a brief introduction about what you do at Ledger. What does it mean to be head of community and education?
Sure. So yeah, as you said, I lead the community and education effort at Ledger. Been at the company for about 3 years now. And what it means is that, when you think about the space and you think about what Ledger does, we do, self-custody. We manufacture security solutions that enable people to own their digital lives and do it securely. Uh, but if I say the exact same thing I just said to you to someone who doesn't know much about the space, it will sound like gibberish. So there's a lot of education that needs to be done. And that is usually done through content creation, platform development, educational platforms, gamified education, um, and then a variety of different initiatives from physical events to partnerships and collaborations. And the whole idea is to abstract the difficulties that people face when they start their journey, whether it be by learning about the basics of Web3 and blockchain, or buying their first crypto, or transferring their first assets to self-custody, to understanding what is the difference between self-custody and secure self-custody, to knowing what the difference is and doing secure self-custody and having a very good understanding of your different pitfalls that they might face along the way. And the last thing I'll say about this is, when you layer the word education on top of crypto, on top of the word security, it's often very intimidating. And, what we really want to do is to make it as simple, engaging, and fun as possible. And that is really driven by experimenting with new approaches and mediums in order to, achieve that purpose.
So how do you materialize that? Because I assume then, so as you said, education is a big part of acquiring new clients, new customers for
Mhm.
Ledger by focusing on relatability with regards to their problems instead of focusing on the technical capabilities of the product. You focus on what it solves for the customer, and
Mhm.
then for them to be really comfortable and engage with learning about what Ledger can do for them, you have different mechanics in place and you apply different formats. How does that
Mhm.
materialize at Ledger?
Yeah, I mean that you're absolutely right. I think you can't just focus on the product and its technical capabilities if it's not put in a context that enables people to relate to that product. That at first gets them interested to learn, right? Like I think there are a variety of different layers, and at Ledger, our job isn't necessarily to evangelize crypto, but it's to make sure that the folks that start, their journey within the space can do it safely and can understand the value of taking ownership of their keys and being in control. And to answer your question more specifically is how do you approach this? Well, there are a variety of different ways through which we approach it. And before getting into education, I might take like a step back and talk about the Ledger brand in general. And I think at the core of the Ledger brand um, are two, in my perspective, are two different engines. There's the culture engine and there's the education engine. And culture is the first piece, is how do you get people interested? How do you make people feel like this technology, this product, this ecosystem is relevant for them? You can't just talk about the bits and rams and making obviously an analogy with the Web 2 and Web 1 world. But in the context of Web 3, we'll be talking about like the secure element and the clear signing and the trusted display. Obviously, we do talk about these core value propositions of the product, but you first need to make people feel interested. And for you to do that, you put the product and the brand in a context that is relevant. And that is done through cultural moments and cultural partnerships. And we've done a lot of that in the past few years, whether it be by, uh, compared to actually other companies and products in the space, we have a physical product that people can hold and see. So, if you have what we call Web3 hardware, you can basically rely on a lot of behaviors and cultural elements that existed in the previous generations of revolutionary hardwares. And if you think about how most of these hardwares gained a lot of adoption, it was mostly through the avenue of culture. So, think about, uh, smartphones. It was mainly through Apple because it was really focused on creativity and applications and gaming and photography. And it wasn't necessarily focused on like how fast, your email would get sent out of your inbox or, how many pixels in the camera. Obviously, that is a conversation, but it wasn't the core of it. So what I'm trying to get at is that with Ledger, what we've tried to do in the past few years is to really insert Ledger in a variety of different cultural contexts. And these cultural contexts vary depending on the different moments. For instance, we've customized our product with brands like Hublot or Fendi. We also enabled communities in the space to be able to customize their own product and either give it or sell it to their benefit. So we've done stuff with ApeCoin, with Sandbox, and then even beyond that, we work with artists in order to provide them with the ability to put their imprint on the Ledger ecosystem, whether it be by helping us design events, or providing them with a platform through which they can exist. So that's the first piece, is like how do you become relevant and how do you become a platform for people to see the interesting things that are happening in the space from a cultural standpoint. And then the second piece is that once you are able to catch someone's attention, then you can educate them. Be like, hey, okay, this thing speaks to me. There's this, whole space, but it's not as technical, as intimidating, as actually connected to some of the things that I personally like. And then you can get into the second piece of how do you do education in a way that doesn't feel traditional, boring, and intimidating, like we said.
What's interesting is, so we got an overview of the funnel approach that you guys have in terms of customer acquisition and then engagement, right? It's you hook people in places that matter to them, on occasions that matter to them. And then once you hook them, they get interested in your product,
Hmm.
and you make the education about your product and what it can provide for the clients in a way that they can understand and be engaged with. So I assume that if you're a tech person and you got, well, of course, if you're in Web3 and you're in tech, you know about Ledger, but let's assume you're in tech, you don't know about Web3 too much, you get introduced to Ledger at a tech event, most likely you're going to have tech related information that is available for you. But then if you're someone that is interested in art and you got to know Ledger through a collaboration with an artist, then most likely you're going to have information about what Ledger does in the art world and how it can enable you to collect art. And so it's like very customer profile specific approaches that allow you to get new customers. And then what's interesting as well is when we trace back to your role and the name of your role, right? It's head of education and community at Ledger, and it's basically related to that funnel, right? It's you educate people, and then you gather them in a community where they can feel involved, engaged, and they want to stay, meaning also more revenue for you guys. Did I understand it well?
Totally. Like, think the whole notion of the funnel is very interesting because it's driven by strategy, but then the tactics within the Web3 space differ completely from tactics that you'd use in the, traditional 360 marketing plan, uh, as the traditional marketers would think about. So obviously, thinking about like how do you make people aware of you? How do you get them to consider you in their consideration set? And then how do you get them to start having intent and to then end up, becoming part of the community and buying the product? And at Ledger, there's something that we often say is that educated people end up becoming Ledger customers. So we don't need to push too hard on the product marketing because you need to do a lot of education before that so that when the product marketing comes into play, there's already a general understanding of things that enables these core value propositions of the product to actually become more meaningful. And one last point regarding to something you said earlier, with regards to being present in different cultural moments and appealing to different audiences. I think you're absolutely right about that. And what's interesting in that is that Ledger is more than just a hardware. It's actually an ecosystem of solutions. You have Ledger Live, it's the companion app. You have the Ledger CL card. You have Ledger Recover, and all of these are actually solving different friction points and speak to different people and audiences. And then beyond that, with Ledger hardware, you can also speak to a variety of different communities in the space in a variety of different ways. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the Ledger brand doesn't have a clear positioning or doesn't have um, a clear vision. It actually does. It's just that all of these different collaborations can be infused with one meaning, but then expressed differently in so many ways. And what Ledger stands for is for you to take back control over your digital assets and your digital life in the future, and to be able to do it securely. And then, it's all about how you bring that message to different audiences using creative ways and mediums.
What's interesting to me is I'm also a Ledger user, and it's interesting that you mentioned Apple before because when you think about it, you can draw a lot of parallels between how Ledger seems to be handling things or infusing the meaning you guys are infusing into your products, the same way that Apple is doing. When you think about it, why are you an Apple user versus other product providers that basically sell the same use case, right? It's because you have
Totally.
the user experience and then you also have the brand that basically makes you feel it like you're embracing a lifestyle. You aspire to, live the Apple brand in your daily life. And it's the same thing with Ledger. Ledger is not the only company providing a solution to secure your assets and have full custody over your crypto assets. But using a ledger, there's something more about it than just the hardware. And so, in which ways has Ledger, besides education, in which ways has Ledger, you know, made that possible today, from hardware to something more?
It's a great question. I think that is a testament to the work that's been done for the past 10 years, right? It materialized in the last few years, but it's based on innovation and trust and product development and the fact that on top of that, a brand was built. You can't just build a brand and have people appeal, like connect to it if the foundations of the product and the research and development and the user experience haven't been there for a while. So that's the first thing. I think there's this element of trust. And then on top of that, to answer your question more specifically, there is a way that we've approached brand building that I think, in my view, is very interesting and horizontal. Um, I think we all understand what Ledger stands for, but we did not confine ourselves within the limits of how we wanted to define it. And I'll give you an example. Um, a lot of artists have actually integrated Ledger products in their artworks. I think now they're countless. Like if you look at like the 6529 meme cards, I think there are about like 4 or 5 meme cards where ledgers are portrayed in them. I think, and to get back to that, it's because the product is iconic. Like, and we didn't necessarily like think about it this way, like the swivel itself and how it turns and all of that, but it ended up with the usage and with time, people ended up associating self-custody with Ledger, with the shape of that specific product, and then ultimately started integrating this product into their artworks, which was due to the fact that we were very open about it. This is just one example, but I'll give you a few other examples. I think one of them is obviously our, ability to be able to enable artists to build the brand with us, integrate the product within their artworks, to provide them with a platform through which they can, reach more people. Because whether it be by collaborating with artists to customize their ledger or enabling artists to include the brand within their artworks, we were amplifying it both ways. On
And it's
top of
very
that,
Web3. It's very Web3, right?
yeah,
Giving like provide, basically allowing others to use your image through art to basically propagate your message and your amplify your brand is very Web3, empowering people.
totally. If it was Web2, they'd probably, receive the cease and desist. Yeah.
You
Which
would
is
be a company would be suing people for using their image and not providing any counterparty, right?
totally, totally. So that's one pillar of it. I think the second one is our presence within the different communities. Like I think starting 2020 to 2021, when you had like a huge amount of people entering the space on a daily basis and communities being formed and people not necessarily knowing how to educate their community members or what would be like the safest journey for them. We were day in, day out, on Discords, Twitter Spaces, building partnerships with communities, collaborating around educational initiatives, custom devices. Um, and I think on top of that, the events that we've made like in the past few years were also very much driven by artists within the space. Like I think, you know, most of the brands in the space, um, they try to build their equity by associating themselves with cultural icons, phenomenons, trends that are coming from outside of the space. You have brands putting their logos on Formula One cars, sponsoring football players. You're doing like UFC stuff, but spending tons of money on you know uh, actors or NFL players to star in their advertisements. We've never really done that. First of all, it's because we're a little bit poorer than the folks that are doing it, but I think mainly because we want to do it inside out. We'd much rather highlight what's interesting and happening inside, so that when the people outside look at it, they don't see the exact same thing that they've seen already on their like Super Bowl advertisements or what they've been seeing in different spaces for years. They see something different, and that, as I said, like crystallized through a variety of different ways, even education. Like, we started doing NFTs to educate people. Like we have a education platform called Ledger Quest where people can go through a variety of different educational, courses, curriculums, and then get rewarded with proof of knowledge NFTs. Those NFTs can prove your knowledge, but the design of those NFTs is actually in collaboration with artists. So the artists are actually designing certifications. We also did like an educational game, a variety of like different community-led initiatives that were really true to what's happening in the space.
What you said on brand building resonates with something that David Horvath mentioned to me in one of my podcast episodes. So David Horvath is a really experienced person in brand building. He's built entertainment and character brands for the past 20 years. He's collaborated with Disney and with Nickelodeon, and he said that in order to build a brand, well, first, that's a long process. You guys have been doing that for the last 10 years. And then what you need to do is not necessarily, especially in the beginning, advertise too much because people know when they're being sold to. What you need to do
Hmm.
is have cultural microtransactions along the way, things that are small or medium, like not, over the top, not a Jimmy Fallon talk, but just like events, touch points that are meaningful to your audience. And then
Hmm.
when these multiply and you have thousands of them, well, then you become hyper relevant. And it's no wonder that artists use the ledger image in their art is because you've become part of the culture by focusing on being involved in what happens daily, being in Twitter Spaces, being on Twitter at events, and just like having meaningful connections with the people that are the true heart of the space, right? And so
Totally.
yeah, that's how I read it. The question I have to you, building on that, is what does it mean for Ledger to have a community? Because, for example,
Hmm.
when you think of, I don't know, Doodles or Bored Apes, like you know what the community is. It's the basically the holders.
Hmm.
For Ledger, is it the users? Is it the community of Web3 at large? Like, how do you define community in your end?
It's a really good question. Um, I would I would actually go back to before defining community is trying to find the difference between community, consumers, and audience. Uh, so how do you find a consumer? It's a transactional relationship. It's someone that buys something from you. What do you expect from a consumer? What does a consumer expect from you? Is expects that, you provide them with a good product and that it has, good value for money, good customer support. So we definitely have consumers, like obviously. How do you define an audience? Is people that listen to what you have to say and are interested in what you have to say. Your followers on different social channels, um, your the content that you create and the people that content is able to reach. Um, and then a community is a level on top of that. A community is a group of people that are consumers and are part of your audience, but adhere to your values and your vision. And I think when you speak of the Ledger community, these are the people that actually are more than just consumers or audiences. They are people that are really engaged with regards to what Ledger stands for and what the overall space stands for as well. I think that, there's the Ledger community. It's Ledger is at the middle of the ecosystem. So the Ledger community is actually quite broad. Like with Ledger, you can be Bitcoin maxi, or you can be, an NFT collector or an NFT creator. You can be Solana head. You can be whatever. But I think ultimately the idea is that within all of those communities in the space, there is an adherence to certain values and a certain vision. And I think when you think about the community in general, I think these are the people that are day in, day out part of the ongoing cultural, uh, you know, ecosystem of the space that we are in. And then obviously you have, token holders that are, either proof of knowledge NFT token holders, people who own NFTs by Ledger. So that's a way to have a direct line of connection with your community. Genesis Pass community, obviously. Um, and that enables you to actually interact with this community differently by providing specific perks through token gating, through raffles, through airdrops, etc. Um, but I think that the definition of community in this space is definitely really interesting because it has an ability. The technology provides you with an ability to engage with this community in a lot of different and innovative ways.
Yeah, that makes me so bullish on Web3 in general for marketers because like it's a whole new toolbox for activating your audience in different ways, in meaningful ways,
Hmm.
at a much more granular level if you wish to. So that's really exciting to me. And there's a couple of podcast episodes that I did on the topic.
Hmm.
We talked about Ledger as a brand. We talked about Ledger's community. When we think of what the community aspires to with regards to the Ledger brand and product, is, at least to me, it seems it's a lifestyle similar to, Apple sort of embodying a lifestyle, or Dom Perignon embodying a lifestyle that enables them to drive prices and fandom beyond the product into something more immaterial but very, very powerful.
Hmm.
And I'd be curious for your thoughts on what the Ledger aspirational lifestyle is. Is it to go bankless and have full ownership over your assets, crypto assets, and just like relying on DeFi and collecting NFTs and like how does it materialize in your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's Ledger's purpose and vision is to empower people to take back control over their digital lives. If you think about like that transition from, and it's a much wider actually societal phenomenon at the moment. I think a lot of people realize that we've grown in a world where we're told that we have tons of freedom, but ultimately, the reality of it is that our freedoms are a little bit limited. And especially when it comes to identity and digital assets and all of that. And I think I'll get back to the lifestyle part, but I think the purpose is to enable people to feel comfortable taking back control and securing their digital assets. So these obviously, can be coins, tokens, NFTs, and in the future, a lot of things will be digital assets. So I think that is the purpose. And then the lifestyle part is how do you actually communicate that to people in a way that resonates with them? And I think that within this overall purpose, there are a variety of different ways through which you could tell the story that will relate to different people. You won't, basically um, tell the story to Bitcoin maximalists the same way you're going to tell it to a much wider audience that of newbies that are just entering the space. And I think what people usually mean by lifestyle is how you're connected to life and how you're connected to people's lives. Uh, because other like the actual opposite of lifestyle would be you know product advertising, right? You just see a product that tell you, again, what we were talking about at the beginning is like what megapixels and the RAM and the speed, and it would just be, different assets where you just have the product. So there's no lifestyle. Uh, when you add the lifestyle component, is there's life, there's people, and there are people doing things in different contexts. And the purpose that we were talking about, the purpose of like taking back control, doing it securely, and feeling confident is the message. But then the lifestyle of how you bring it to life can be different depending on who you're talking to. And I think for now, what we've tried to do to, answer your specific question is to be very associated with the world of culture, fashion, gaming, and to push on these fronts. Why? It's because most people are interested in these things. And ultimately, you need to make people feel, or you need to make Ledger feel relevant to what's happening in the space. And not only feel relevant as a way of surfing the trends, but actually have something interesting to say and have a clear positioning that resonates with this like societal phenomenon and cultural phenomenons that we mentioned.
Yeah, I've seen what. So, who did you collaborate with again? Was it Balenciaga or a brand like
Fendi.
that? Fendi,
Fendi.
yeah, Fendi, right.
Yes.
And I remember you guys collaborated with Fendi, and I remember also being on Twitter and seeing a lot of people who were like, "I'll never buy this accessory," because like
Mhm.
you go out with. So the accessory, if I remember well, was a case for your ledger or like
Totally.
a necklace, right? And
Yeah.
so meaning what so assuming you have a lot of your net worth in crypto and your
Hmm.
ledger would usually sit at home hidden and the seed phrase would be even more hidden. um, Here ledger was suggesting that you could go out with your ledger around your neck and just like
Hmm.
take it with you because it's part of your lifestyle and it's part of yeah.
Totally.
And some people were like, well, if I do this, then I'm really subject to a wrench attack, right? And a wrench attack is like a sort of a geeky word for those of us listening and don't know. It's sort of a geeky word for an attack where just someone takes a wrench and hits you on the head with it if they want to,
Hmm.
if they want you to spit out your access to your ledger
Hmm.
and steal your crypto. So how do you view this yourself in terms of ledger promoting that usage of a ledger product?
It's a very, very interesting topic. First of all, if you create that conversation, it means that there's room for people to learn more and to get educated. I think second is the reaction to that shows how much people are actually, um, there's this always this status quo bias where you want things to stay the way they are because you feel comfortable in the certain conditions and you've been used to doing things the way they are for a while. But just to unpack what you just mentioned, so Ledger is a product. It is what we call a hardware wallet. It enables people to generate different blockchain accounts through public and private key cryptography. While Ledger usually holds in the physical product itself is the private key, and that private key is protected by a PIN code that you choose, and it's backed up by a seed phrase that you don't choose and that you have to write down on a piece of paper. So I'm just like kind of wrapping and never give to anyone. Don't take a photo of it. Don't put it online because if your phone gets hacked and someone has access to the seed phrase, they will be able to access your funds. That being said, it doesn't mean that you should only have one ledger, and it doesn't necessarily mean that all of your assets should be stored on a ledger, and it also doesn't mean that all your ledgers should have the same function. Some of your ledgers will act as a medium of exchange, not necessarily the ledger being the medium of exchange, but the use case of it for day-to-day transactions. Others could be more like a vault. And then ultimately, if you get to the threat model and the attack that you just mentioned, just someone snapping your ledger away from you, they would actually have to guess your PIN code correctly. And if they guess it incorrectly 3 times in a row, the device would factory reset. Someone would tell you, yeah, but someone could like hold you and make you like, say your PIN code. Uh, Obviously, there's a risk, but ultimately, if you live in that type of vision to the world, you wouldn't go out with a Rolex, you wouldn't drive an expensive car, you wouldn't put in an expensive hoodie. Like I think if you wouldn't go out with your credit card because ultimately someone could do the same thing, right? Like they could hold you, take you to an ATM machine and make you withdraw your funds as well if you have an Amex Black card or whatever. So I think ultimately, obviously there are risks associated with it, but I think people overemphasize the risks and don't necessarily understand the threat model behind it. And yes, please, if you have your whole net worth on a ledger, please don't put it around your neck. But if you're just using it to mint a couple of NFTs, or if you want to say that you belong to a specific community, and this is why most people do it anyway. It's like I sometimes put my ledger around my neck at events because obviously I have tons of customized ledgers that I love. And it's a nice conversation starter. And most of the people come up to me and be like, hey, how the hell are you doing that? And then I explain to them exactly what I just explained to you. So yeah, that's how I view it.
To be honest, I really like that answer because it opens the mind as well, and the more you're in crypto at a deep level, the more you view Ledger, or you can't, usually people would view Ledger as a vault, right? So you have a
Yes.
vault, you keep your crypto there, don't take it out, like really keep it hidden and your seed phrase in a physical vault and like
Hmm.
but the truth is, it's the same as having a bank with all your money there, and then having a wallet with some of your money there for daily transactions, and having a black card, which is functional, also being a flex when you take it out. Oh, he's got a black card. Well, if I belong to a certain, class, social
Hmm.
class, having a ledger can also be a testimony to belonging to the crypto community. And I like
Totally.
that idea. It's pretty cool. It's like having an iPhone. Oh, he's got an iPhone. He doesn't have an LG or Samsung. So that
Totally.
is an interesting approach. Yeah.
And just one thing I'll add about what you said because it's really interesting is like most people consider Ledger to be a vault because the use case of the technology for now has been mainly focused around storing value. Bitcoin is digital gold. Ethereum started changing this because you started having like digital assets and applications that you can interact with and art that you can buy and sell. And but we haven't really gotten to the stage where people are using crypto on a daily basis and need a device in order to be able to use it on a daily basis. Where your gym membership is an NFT in your wallet, and the ticket for your football game is also an NFT, or you go and you buy sneakers in a shop and you need to basically either verify its authenticity or sign a certain transactions using your wallet. I think all of these things will end up coming to life. And at this point, it won't be weird to walk around. with a ledger device because it will be part of your daily habit to use that technology. Whereas now people are a bit like kind of makes them uneasy, like it makes them uncomfortable because of the fact that the way they perceive crypto is that, oh, I'm just investing in crypto to store my value and to hodl for the long term. We obviously have traders, but these are not the people that are going to be putting ledgers around their necks.
Question I have for you: the way I see Ledger from a customer experience, like a user experience perspective, is it's very time consuming to approve transactions. And I like it because
hmm
like I know it's not easy. So of course I feel secure in the way that I approve transactions. But if you
hmm
take a Ledger device as I see them, today with this shape, the ones that you have to click and then enter your PIN code every time you do something, it's pretty time consuming and uneasy to do transactions like go and buy a bread and then go and have a drink. Does Ledger have in their portfolio a kind of Ledger product that makes these kinds of physical transactions easier on a daily basis? Like, hey, I just tap this and it's going to automatically approve my transaction.
Not yet, but that'll definitely come if you think about like where the future of hardware is heading and the future use cases that will come to life will also shape how the hardware itself will evolve. For now, Ledger Stacks is in development. It's a product that is definitely much more aligned with how people currently use hardwares on a daily basis, namely Web2 hardware. Has a much wider screen. It's obviously touch screen. It enables you to clear sign transactions pretty seamlessly. And on top of that, it's customizable. It is basically the size of a credit card, feels good in the hand, and isn't doesn't take too much space. Um, and I think if you look at what's in the stacks as a product, you have an NFC chip. Obviously, that NFC chip isn't used today in order to approve transactions directly, but it does have a couple of use cases that are pretty interesting. And ultimately, I think to your point, the fact that sometimes ledger transactions take a little bit of time is due to the two buttons and due to the fact that you sometimes have to click multiple times in order to find this certain letter or certain number. And with the touchscreen, that'll be so much more seamless. It's just a few clicks away.
All right, so guys,
Go.
we had a little technical issue, and we're gonna have to wrap this episode up because I know Mo has to attend an important meeting. But what we will do is, if there's any questions that you guys wanted to ask Mo, and find it interesting to have a round two, another episode with Mo, just let me know in the comments or hit me on Twitter with a DM, and we'll make sure to bring that on board for a second episode. But Mo, it was a really great episode with you. Great moment of discussion. I hope you enjoyed it as well, and I'll see you soon, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. I really enjoyed it actually. I think you're a great podcaster and I'm looking forward to listening to, most of the amazing content that you got planned. And yeah, maybe next time we can talk more about, generative art and art in a more general sense and, happy to come on board anytime.
Absolutely. And by the time this episode comes out, you guys, I'll have launched my previous episode with Jean-Michel Payon, who is a former executive from Ledger and now is leading investments into digital art. So very interesting episode. You'll find the link in the comments or in the description below. And if you want to follow more of my content, hit the notification bell if you're subscribed or subscribe if you don't, because there's a lot more coming and we'll be seeing Mo again for sure in the future. Thank you, Mo.